Mental health is not happiness, it's not positivity, or it's not the absence of distress. It is a dynamic system of emotion regulation, thinking patterns, behavioral responses, and relational functioning under changing life demands. Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Project. My name is Stephen. I am a teacher, university lecturer as well, a psychologist and therapist. And this is going to be a rather long series on different mental health topics. We're going to look at stress, anxiety, depression, bereavement, trauma, therapy itself, everything. But first, I wanted to start with a foundational kind of series of episodes around mental health so we can kind of get a good basic understanding around this topic before we're going to delve deeper into other subtopics. Okay, so um, most people, and the focus today, sorry, is going to be on what mental health actually means. Okay, so most people think mental health means feeling okay, okay, feeling calm or feeling happy. But by that definition, most human beings in the world would be actually classed as mentally unwell, okay? Because the actual state for human beings to be isn't completely calm, happy, and feeling okay. That's just not going to happen for the majority. And if that was the case, we'd have an overdiagnosis of mental health illnesses, okay? Because things like grief, stress, anxiety, anger, feeling overwhelmed, these aren't signs of poor mental health at all. These are kind of signs of being a human. Okay? Human beings have a range of emotions, a range of feelings, and these are all valid and these all occur in everyday life. Okay, so what we need to get out of this habit of is seeing these emotions as some kind of signal to be, oh, you're mentally unwell or you're not mentally healthy. That's not true at all. In fact, as a therapist, I'm more worried when somebody comes to see me and they don't feel any of those emotions. Okay? So you don't want to measure mental health by what someone feels. Instead, you measure it by what they can do when they feel that way. Okay, so first thing to understand, mental health, okay, is best understood as the capacity to experience internal states. So these are kind of thoughts, emotions, behavioral patterns, okay? And and your ability within those to function, adapt, relate, and also recover. Okay. So there's kind of four kind of sub areas that I want to kind of quickly talk about. Okay. First is emotional regulation. So this is kind of how feelings move through you. So what do I mean by that? So imagine you are angry. How long does that anger sit inside you? Does it sit inside you for days on end after a particular event that annoyed you? Or does it kind of pass through you and then, half an hour you kind of back to normal state and then you might feel a different emotion like happiness? If you're able to have these emotions pass through you and these feelings kind of come and go and in waves almost, that's a good sign. However, if you are holding on to these kind of emotions, anger, resentment, kind of that's when that occurs, that's when that's when you may want to see a therapist, okay? Because that means you're not able to regulate your emotions properly. The second one is what's called cognitive flexibility. This is your ability to think under pressure, okay? Um, so imagine that you are at work and you're told to do this kind of complex calculation to work out something for the business. So that's a random example. Um, how you deal with that under pressure is a big insight into how your mental health actually is. If you start to crumble and have a literal mental breakdown, or you are struggling so much that you kind of run away or hide away, or you kind of go home all kind of bothered and you can't cognitively focus on anything else, like watching a TV show, for example, then that's something that needs to be looked into. The third one is what's called behavioral functioning, and this is what you can still do in life. Okay, so you might go through a bereavement or a relationship breakup. Are you still able to, when that's happening, go out and enjoy, or partly enjoy anyway, and even with your friends, or go see your family, or go to work? Are you able to go to a concert still? Are you able to still do things? That's behavioral functioning. Again, if you're able to do those things despite having difficult emotions that you're facing, that's a good sign. However, you can't do those things, that's something to think about again. And the last one is what's called relational capacity, and this is how you connect with other people. Are you able to hold conversations with others, even when you're kind of going through issues yourself? Are you able to speak to your friends and family and empathize with them when they're going through something? That's your kind of relational capacity. When that's depleted, that's not a good sign for your mental health. Okay? So mental health is not a mood, it's a set of adaptive capacities. Now, I want to kind of start drilling down some key teaching points, okay? So the first thing is that mental health is not a fixed state. Okay, so some people have very good mental health, but they feel anxious. This is normal. Anxiety is a normal response in certain situations. Doing this can be anxiety inducing, talking to a camera and trying to get across these points, okay? Do I feel anxious? Only slightly because I'm used to lecturing, right? But that's normal, okay? Whereas you could have poor mental health and still function socially, okay? Now that's interesting. So there's a kind of almost opposites. Poor mental health, but still be able to focus socially and adapt to that social world, but your mental health internally is terrible. Okay, that can be true as well. And the main thing really to understand as well for this first point is that it fluctuates day to day, and that's important. Okay, it's not a fixed state, it will fluctuate. You don't want to always be happy, you don't always want to be sad, you want these kind of shifts in emotion because that's what make us humans, okay? This fluctuation, this kind of gives richness to life and quality to life, okay? But things can change it, okay? So things like sleep, stress, relationships, work, overload, wherever it is, all these things alter and help and fluctuate or cause fluctuations, sorry, in your mental state. Again, that's completely normal as well. The second thing, this is getting a bit more technical here, but distress is not dysfunction. This is a second key point. Distress is not dysfunction. And this is crucial. So distress is your kind of emotional pain you're feeling towards something, okay? So again, when you go for grief, like a loss, like a death of a family member, if you're going for a relationship breakup, if you lose your job, you may go through distress and intense emotional pain. This is normal. This is what everyone should go through when this is happening. Again, an absence of that is worrying. Okay. Dysfunction, however, is loss of functioning over time. So to give that example of grief and kind of flesh it out a bit more, someone grieving a close family death may be highly distressed, so highly sad, maybe angry, whatever the kind of emotions are kind of are coming up for them in their grief, but still psychologically healthy actually where someone may be emotionally numb, not have any emotions, not have anxiety, not have anger, not be upset, not be crying, nothing like that, okay, and actually disengaged. So they might have low distress levels, but they might have significant dysfunction, so they might not want to still go out at all, or talk to people, or go to work, or interact. Okay, so you can see the difference there, distress versus dysfunction. Okay, so what the kind of key point here, the second key point I'm trying to get across is not to pathologize pain and instead assess impact of that pain. Okay, so not to pathologize. Third one links to the third key point. It links to the first one, but it's about flexibility. Okay, mental health is about flexibility, not stability. So healthy functioning is not always about staying calm. Okay, so we need to kind of get away from that kind of outdated model. Okay, as I mentioned before, it's about moving from emotional states, happiness to sadness, and be able to kind of transverse these different areas. But it's also, and this is another section that's separate now, it's about recovering after activation. Now, what does that mean? So imagine you are about to go to do a presentation in front of your colleagues at work or at school or university, okay? Most people feel anxious before that, okay? That's normal. But healthy regulation will also mean that after the presentation is over, you are able to recover from that. Okay, you're able to calm down after that and just regulate yourself again. That's called healthy regulation. That's a good thing. But imagine instead that you stay anxious for days after that event's occurred, after that presentation. That's not good. Okay, that means that you're not actually recovering after kind of an activating state. Okay, that's something again that might have to be looked into and get some help for because you should be able to recover after an anxiety-inducing situation. You also might even just avoid, you might be so anxious for that presentation, you might decide in the future to avoid all presentations entirely. That is also problematic. That's also something that shouldn't be done. Okay. That's another kind of strategy called avoidance. And again, we're going to look at that in the future episode of this kind of series. But that's also not good. Okay. So again, normal to feel stressed, normal to feel anxious before presentation, but how long does that stay with you for, sit with you for? The fourth key point, the nervous system is always involved in this. Okay, so mental health reflects a lot of different things, which we will talk about in future topics and discussions here. Mental health incorporates threat detection systems, it incorporates emotion regulation, it incorporates stress regulation systems, it incorporates all these things. Okay, but what's important to gather from this first video is to understand that what we call mental is deeply biological and embodied. Okay, the mental and the kind of the body and mind are entwined. This kind of idea of separation of the two is just not true at all. Okay, they are deeply, deeply entwined with each other, and that's so important to get across to you. Okay, so if some people think, oh, from overthinking, it's purely cognitive, it's purely in the mind. No, it's actually in the body as well, because often there's a physiological arousal that might happen beforehand that actually leads to you actually having that kind of thinking about overthinking. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay. And the kind of fifth key part I want to get across to you, the fifth one, is functioning matters more than feeling. Okay, now that basically means, kind of as a therapist, as a kind of when I see somebody, okay, um, if they're going through a particularly difficult part of their life, I might ask them, can they still work or study? Can they maintain relationships? Can they recover after distress? And can they still make choices that are aligned with their values? Now, if all the answers or most of the answers to those questions are yes, I'm not as worried. If they say no to that, then that's more worrying. Okay, the person cannot work or study after kind of say a bereavement. They can't maintain relationships with those closest to them. If they're struggling to recover distress wise, and if they're not making choices aligned to their values as a person and they're changing how they approach situations, that's concerning. Okay, so mental health is adaptive functioning despite this internal experiencing. Okay. Now, I'll give some clinical examples quickly. I mentioned one already, grief, but let me just quickly walk through that again to make sure that's very crystal clear. So, somebody's crying, for example, daily after loss. Okay, they are in high distress. That's normal. Okay, but they still attend work and they still are connected socially to their friends and closest family members. I'm not worried about that person. As in, I'm worried, as in, I want to help them, obviously. So I'm not worried. I want to help them, obviously, but I know I can kind of work through that. Okay, work with them through that, through their distress, and kind of talk it through. That's not mental. The mental health is still pretty stable in that moment. Now, again, if the distress lasted for months, then maybe we'll have to revisit that. Second one is anxiety before exams, an absolute classic one. Okay, so you have racing thoughts, you have tensions, you have worries about the exam, all these kind of different things go through your mind. Okay, that is normal. That's a normal adaptive response because it's a stressful situation you're going to go through. Okay, most people don't like exams. Some people do. Most people don't like exams. Okay, that's normal adaptive response. However, if it becomes persistent avoidance, so you decide to not keep going to those exams after that first one, or you're severely impaired in those exams, as in you do really badly, way worse than you would have done if you weren't anxious, then that again is something we have to think about. But normally, anxiety before exams is completely normal. Now, the third example I want to give is burnout. Now, this is one where, to be honest, I could probably do a sub-series about this because it's such an important, integral thing that people are suffering from. But burnout is one, okay? So this is where people are still functioning externally, they're still functioning, they still show up to work, but these people are what's called emotionally depleted. Okay, they're emotionally depleted as people. They're detached from the situation, both at work, possibly in at home, and they are not recovering because, well, basically, a few reasons why. First of all, they have low distress awareness. They're not aware that they're actually going through burnout. They're not aware enough in their body to understand it or their mind to understand it. And they have what's called impaired regulation and recovery. These people actually are struggling to actually recover. Okay, these people are actually struggling to recover. This is because they don't get any kind of respite, to put it simply. Okay, so as a result, they can't regulate themselves and they can't recover their mental state. Now, this is one where, if you're going through crunch time at work or like, a year-end deadline, that's fine. That's completely normal. Okay, that's well, normal under the system which we're under, let's say, right? Fine. So it might be for a few weeks, maybe it's a month. This happens. If, however, this burnout is continuous for months on end, problem, and that's a long-term problem. Right. So now I come to the point where I really want to really take apart a myth that's really pernicious and really dangerous. Okay. Um, I want to kind of break away from this myth that people assume that mental health means feeling good. This needs to be completely taken apart as a point, okay? because it creates three problems that are very, very dangerous to kind of work with. The first one is that it pathologizes normal emotions. It makes normal emotions such as sadness, anger, anxiety, all these emotions, it makes it seem like there's something to fix. This is not the case. These are not something to fix. These are normal emotions that people go through, okay? These aren't things that have to be sorted out. Now, if they're feeling anxiety for long term, or anger for long term, or sadness for long term, yes. But pathologizing pain in the short term is incredibly, or pathologizing, sorry, the emotional pain short term is incredibly dangerous as a kind of way to go, because it kind of negates the idea that you can ever feel emotion and that it's normal, and it denormalizes it. When in actual fact, the opposite is true. If you don't have pain, emotional pain, that or emotional anger or sadness, anger, whatever it is, or happiness, or whatever it is, because you can also be too happy, don't forget as well, which is again possibly, but um, this is too much pathologization. Okay. The second thing is that it invalidates the stress. It means people think they have to be happy. And this is again incredibly damaging, okay? It means that, well, you probably heard it in your life before. Somebody might say to you, "Oh, you should be happy." It's like, well, that is, thanks for that. How many times I heard that in therapy? How many times I heard that in my own life, actually, to be honest with you, just being candid there, that, this is completely invalidating. It means you cannot show your emotion. It means you cannot just express it. And it means that the stress isn't the norm when it can be sometimes. It also hides real dysfunction in people who look fine. Some people are able to present very well. They're able to look smart, look well put together. They go to a job, they have a relationship, they have, they're functioning in some ways, okay, but they're actually hiding this real dysfunction behind them, okay. They might be drinking or might be doing drugs behind the scenes, okay. That's kind of helping them cope with everyday life. It's hiding real dysfunction that's not getting sorted out, okay. So again, it means that, if you look fine, you must be fine, right? We don't say that for a broken bone, do you? If somebody's like got a broken arm, you don't go, oh, you look fine. You don't do that. So why is it mental health is treated differently? Something to think about, right? So, what I want to say here, and we're coming towards end, slowly towards end now, is that good mental health is not the absence of difficult feelings. No, it is the ability to move through those feelings without losing yourself. Again, I'm going to repeat that. It's one of the most key parts of this whole video. Good mental health is not the absence of difficult feelings. It is the ability to move through these feelings without losing yourself. Okay, so as I close now, I want to think you maybe ask yourself a few questions. Okay, instead of asking yourself kind of how did I feel today? How do I feel today? Maybe try asking what can I do while feeling this? So if you're sad, you might want to ask yourself what can I still do while feeling sad? If the answer is not much, then maybe that's something to think about. That's maybe something you want to maybe reach out to for some help. How quickly can I recover after an emotional activation? Say you have a difficult day at work, your boss has been annoying or your teacher's been annoying or whatever it is, and then you get some kind of anger or can I get upset, whatever it is, right? How Ask yourself how quickly am I able to recover from this? If it's after a couple of hours, fine. If it's taking you 6, 8, 10, 12 hours or even a couple of days, again, maybe that's something to seek some help for. And also think to yourself, am I flexible or stuck in one state? Am I able to move from sadness to anger to happiness when the situation depends upon it or suits it, should we say, or is usual in those circumstances? If the answer is no, again, that's something to think about, okay? Because the last thing I really want to get across is that mental health is never about not struggling, okay? It's not about never struggling. It's what you're able to do when you are struggling. That's the key thing. Okay, I'm gonna one more time for that last bit. Mental health is never about not struggling. It is about what you can do when you are struggling. That's the key distinction, and that is what mental health actually is. Okay, so please hit a like, dislike, whatever you want to do. Put some comments. Please do subscribe. This is again, like I said, the first foundational video in a kind of longer series on a range of topics. So yes, I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Okay, take care and look after yourself. Bye bye.